Chapter 13. A Flying Doll. I understand, Mr. Hollister, that your boys have been picking on Homer, and without cause, Mr. Ruffley stated. That's right, Homer said. Why, Dad, Pete burst out, that's not true. Just a minute, son. His father waved him into silence. Let's hear the full accusation. Mr. Ruffley went on to say that as a boy he himself got into fights, but this was out of date now. Nice boys just didn't punch one another. And you mean Homer doesn't fight? Mr. Hollister asked. He could hardly keep from laughing, and his children had broad grins on their faces. Seeing this, Mr. Ruffley replied, Of course Homer has to defend himself, but what I really came to talk about was something else. First, suppose we let bygones be bygones. Now, I understand that you people are here to hunt for the same pirate ship, the Mystery, as I am. We're here on a vacation, Mr. Hollister replied. The children are enjoying themselves, looking for souvenirs. Of course, if they should find a clue to the old ship. That's just the point, Mr. Ruffley interrupted. They already have found a couple of fine clues. My outfit has located nothing at the spot where they've been working. We're going to move. What do you say we join forces? Everyone was startled by the proposal, but instantly the children decided all the fun would be gone if they had to be with Homer Ruffley to hunt for the pirate ship. Well, children, Mr. Hollister spoke up. What do you say? Pete jumped to his feet and faced his father. Then he burst out, I say no. Good for you, Ricky cried. I'd rather work by ourselves. And I would too, said Pam. And me, Holly added. Well, Mr. Ruffley, said Mr. Hollister, I guess you have your answer. The treasure hunter was so angry, he arose abruptly and said, Come on, Homer, I've never met such rude, ungrateful people, and stormed off the porch. A few feet from the house, Homer turned and cried, You'll be sorry. We'll find the treasure alone, and we won't give you any of it like we were going to. Daddy, said Sue, are we really rude and undergrates? Her father laughed and said he thought it was the Ruffleys who were rude. As for being ungrateful, well, maybe the Hollisters missed a good chance, but working with unpleasant people was a hard way to make money. I suggest you all forget the whole thing and go play on the beach. Want to see my new kite, Dad? Pete asked. It's finished. There's a good wind. I'll try it out. He went to his room and returned with the new kite. While he was gone, Uncle Russ had come home. He looked in amazement at Pete's invention. That's a dandy, he exclaimed, looking over the intricate work. It looks just like a seagull, Pam remarked. The kite, about 5 feet wide, had 2 wings which were bent just like a gull's. The front of the kite was shaped like a bird's head, and the tail was spread as if it were a beautiful white gull in flight. It even has feet, Sue laughed. Let's try it out right away, Ricky said enthusiastically. They all raced down to the beach. Pete let out a lot of string, and Uncle Russ held the kite aloft some distance away. Let her go, Pete shouted, and began to run. The big paper seagull rose gracefully into the air. As the wind caught the kite, it soared higher and higher. It's nifty, Ricky praised him. You ought to win a prize in the contest. As Pete reeled in the paper seagull, he noticed that Rachel had joined the group. She, as well as Pam, complimented him. Then his sister said, Remember, girls are allowed in this contest, aren't they? Sure. Are you thinking of building a kite? Pam winked at Rachel and said, Come on, let's get it now. Get what? Pete wanted to know. You'll see in a minute, Pam replied as she raced off with her friend. In a few minutes, the girls returned. Between them, they were holding a box kite that resembled a big doll. Yikes, that's keen, Ricky said. It sure is, Pete agreed. It sure ought to win a prize. That is, if it can fly, he added teasingly. Course it can, Pam said. Let's try it, Rachel. The box kite rose quickly in the strong breeze and looked even more like a lovely big doll than it did on the ground. As the children watched, they suddenly saw another kite flying not far away. In a moment, its owner appeared over a nearby dune, holding the string attached to it. Homer Roughly. His kite skipped to the right and left, coming very close to the box kite. "Hey, Homer," Pete shouted. "Don't let the strings cross." Homer acted as if he did not hear. His kite dipped again, coming even closer to the flying doll. "Oh, his string is cross stars," Pam cried. "I do hope they don't tangle." "He's doing it on purpose," Rachel declared, trying to run out of the path of the other kite. "He's just trying to get even with us," Pete said. Then he shouted again, "Homer, get your kite out of the way!" Instead of doing this, the other boy began to jerk at his kite string. "He's trying to saw your string in two," Pete said to Pam. "That's a mean trick." All the children shouted at Homer, but he continued to saw the two kite strings together. "Oh dear," Rachel exclaimed. "If our kite string breaks, our lovely doll will be broken, and it took us so long to make it. We never could get another ready for the contest." But suddenly something strange happened. Homer's kite leaped higher into the air. His string had broken instead of Pam's. "See what happens, smarty?" Ricky shouted, as Homer's kite disappeared out of sight behind the dunes. Homer spluttered something, which the children could not hear, then picked up a stone and threw it towards the box kite. Fortunately, the stone came nowhere near it. Homer turned and ran off in search of his runaway toy. "I'm glad we're rid of him," Rachel said. Not long afterwards, the sky became cloudy, and the wind grew stronger. "I think you'd better pull your kite down before the wind snaps it," Pete advised. The girls carefully brought it down, and they all walked back to the house. Just before supper time, Ricky and Holly decided to take Zip for a run on the beach. The dog stayed nearby for several minutes, dashing in and out of the water and barking at the waves. Then suddenly he spied another dog some distance away and raced toward him. "Look, the other dog's digging," Ricky said. "I wonder what he's found." The strange dog's body was half hidden in a hole not far from the water's edge. But as Zip came up, the other animal jerked himself out and growled. Zip sniffed at the hole. The Airedale snapped at him. "Say, I'll bet that's Homer's dog," Ricky cried. "I saw him on the barge when I was getting my periwinkles. His name's Mike." Holly giggled. Even their dog's unfriendly. She turned to Zip. "Come on home," she ordered. But Zip had no intention of leaving. He wanted to find out what was in the hole and began to dig in it. But immediately Mike nipped his ear. Then a fight started. Both dogs snarled and bit as they tumbled about. "Stop it! Stop it!" Pam screamed. But the animals paid no attention. Suddenly Ricky had an idea. "Let's try to get the dogs in the water, Holly. That'll fix them." The two children moved in on the fighting animals from the land side. Foot by foot, Zip and Mike were shoved toward the water. Then suddenly a big wave rolled in, and the dogs were knocked over. Before they could resume their fight, Holly had grabbed Zip by the collar, and Ricky had Mike's. "We better go home with Zip," said Holly. "But I want to find out what's in the hole," Ricky objected. "I'll tell you what, you lead Zip home. I'll stay here a little while." "Okay," Holly agreed. "But don't be long, it's nearly supper time." When Zip was a safe distance away, Ricky let Mike free. But instead of returning to the hole to dig, the dog ran off toward the ocean. Left alone, Ricky looked into the opening. He could see something black and rusty buried in the sand. Digging with both hands, the boy finally uncovered enough of the object to recognize it. "An old anchor," he told himself. Scooping away more sand, Ricky suddenly realized that the letter M was staring at him, then a Y, and finally he uncovered the complete word, mystery. "Yikes!" the boy shouted. "This is great! I must take this home." He kept on working until the whole anchor could be seen. By this time the opening in the sand was so deep that only the top of Ricky's head showed. He climbed out and then reached down to haul up the anchor. It would not budge. I'll have to get somebody to help me, the boy decided. He looked around, but the beach was deserted. I'll go home. Bursting with his secret, he ran all the way. Out of breath, he rushed in and told his family, who were already at the table, about the wonderful find. "Let's go right back and get it," he urged. But Mrs. Hollister, although she was excited too, thought that they should finish their supper first. But everyone hurried, and in 15 minutes they were on their way. Ricky led the way, scampering over bits of driftwood and large seashells along the beach. The boy was so excited and ran so fast that even Pete had trouble keeping up with him. "Hey, wait a minute, Ricky," his brother shouted. "That anchor won't fly away." The younger boy, some 20 yards ahead, turned and beckoned Pete to hurry. "This is a real important clue," he called out. "I don't want anybody to get it before we do." Ricky raced ahead and reached the hole first. As he peeked in, a look of complete bewilderment came over his face. The old anchor was gone.